Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute once we get everybody in from the waiting room. Hi, everybody. Just one more minute and we'll get started as I still see people are coming in. All right, Laura, you want to go ahead?
I do. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks everyone for joining us today. So welcome to NPD and SIA's Retail Data 101 webinar series. So this offering, if you haven't joined our two previous webinars, those went off last Tuesday and Wednesday on alpine equipment and AT alpine touring and Nordic equipment. So if you didn't join those and this is your first time joining us for this series, it's really meant to be the icebreaker for those of you that may not be certain of how to get started with retail data, how to uncover trends, and then subsequently how to use them in your business. So with that, you might be a little bit apprehensive or uncertain where or how to begin. And so this series is really meant for you and to help you do just that. For anyone that has attended on the previous iterations of it, maybe raise your hand or, submit a question and say, yeah, I've been here. And then I'll know, how fast to move through the upfront series part. So upfront part of the series. So the first, 5 or 10 slides are really carryover from webinar to webinar. And then the meat of the presentation, the data examples, will give you the specifics on today's category, which is snowboard equipment. So if you have joined us before, then you know that I'm Laura Hills. If you haven't, then welcome. I'm Laura Hills. I'm an analyst with NPD for the specialty outdoor and snow industries. I'm also the director of client development for NPD's sports and outdoor division. So I work directly with SIA and several industry leaders in the snow market to help them uncover and capitalize on the pertinent trends that are impacting our industry today. So as I said, the webinar that I have for you today is the third in a series of 4. So today is snowboard equipment. Tomorrow will be soft goods and accessories. So it'll focus heavily on outerwear and apparel, and then headwear and handwear. Each with the purpose of being an educational extension of the total industry trends webinars, like the one Julia Day and I delivered a few weeks ago, if you were able to capture that. They're also intended to walk you through the NPD data on your specific categories, so give you a little bit more meat on the bone than what the total industry overview provides. And it's meant to offer you an outline of where the data comes from, how to read it, and then again, most importantly, what decisions you can be making with it. The one-on-one structure will illustrate some simple baby steps of data analysis and show you where and how to begin that journey. So if at the end of this series, you're still uncertain of, where to go and what to do, please do reach out to me directly or to SIA and make sure that, we're there as a resource for you. So as I mentioned, NPD and SIA, we partnered on this series knowing that now is certainly a most especially critical time in retail, and the businesses, especially small businesses, need every tool that we have at hand to stay relevant in today's market. Some of the data that I'll showcase for you today is available to you as an SIA member as an ongoing monthly benefit to your membership. So know that this is an incredible value, and I hope that it will remove any of those apprehensions or uncertainties that you have. I will bring in some data today that is beyond what's available to you just at a membership level to SIA. So that would be brand and item level information. So if you're interested in getting access to that, your organization doesn't have it today, then again, reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with the right folks. So for today's agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about NPD and where our data comes from. I'll make the case for, why it's so imperative to pay attention to data, and then also, the aspects of your business where you can apply it. And then I'll take you through the most recent data presented on today's category and suggestions of ways that you can leverage it. So today's category being snowboard equipment. And then I'll highlight the other data sources that you have through SIA and suggest that you have an opportunity to really leverage all of these data sources together and get those even greater insights and impact. And then lastly, I'll show you what your reports look like, the ones that you have in your access through your membership with SIA. And I'll take a little time to walk through what those look like. If there's any questions, along the way, please certainly share them out. I'll try to not breeze through the data too quickly. I'll try to take it slow so that you have a chance to, formulate those questions or ask them if you have them. And then if you don't get a chance to drop it into the Q&A, then please certainly follow up with me afterward. I've gotten some really great communication from attendees from the previous session. So please know that that's an option as well. So for those of you that are new to the SIA NPD webinars, NPD is a truly global organization. So we operate in 19 countries across the globe. In those countries and in those industries, our data, whether it's consumer or point of sale base, is considered the data of record for the industries that we track. We've been in business for over 50 years, and we work directly with the world's leading brands and retailers. And our heads aren't just in one space. We're able to bring you both the granular analysis of snowboard equipment that we're going to show you today, as well as look up and across industries and speak to the macro trends that are taking place from a total retail perspective. So NPD's website, if you haven't been to it, it's a wealth of public press releases and studies, and there's a lot of great information there, and I really encourage you to go and take a look at it. If you're a participating retailer or a client of ours, then you have access to deeper levels of the data, and you can glean a tremendous amount of insight from those. Specifically in the sports business at NPD, in addition to covering everything on the far left side, which is, the court and the track, so baseball, basketball, football, tennis, to everything all the way to the right, which is what we're going to talk about today, everything related to snowboard equipment, so top of the mountain all the way to the bottom, and give you examples of how to use this data for analysis. So the question of the day and that we're going to answer is why data? Why do we need it? And why do we say that it's critical? So first and foremost, data is the unbiased input to your decision making. We make countless decisions in our personal lives and in our business lives, using our gut and using our intuition and using our expertise on the market and on the business. But what the data offers you is, facts to justify your feelings and your intuition. It's the analytics that add weight to your anecdotes. And so we really say use the data to validate those gut feelings, to bring clarity, and then ensure that your judgment isn't being clouded by other factors. Secondly, data is the great equalizer. So it levels the playing field and offers all companies in the space or in the market an opportunity to gain a competitive advantage. And certainly in a data-led industry, we see all ships go up. And then one point that I hear all the time from buyers and commercial teams is that data, and particularly NPD data, offers one language at the buying table. One language and one version of the truth. This creates a foundation for productive buying and selling conversations, with the retailers and with buyers. What I'm also hearing more and more specifically in specialty-centric businesses is that retailers not only appreciate an educated sales rep, but they're also coming to expect sales reps to come equipped with recommendations for the direction of the business that are backed by data. And so this approach not only helps you build trust with your business partners, but also build trust within your organization. COVID has certainly fast-tracked our retail timeline for change, and in today's fast-changing retail landscape, both manufacturers and retailers really need to innovate and become even more savvy. So here's a myriad of ways that we see businesses leveraging our data in their decision-making and in their operations. So let's jump into some ways to do this. And then here are some of the common questions that we hear from clients and from retailers that we use the data to help answer. So, what is the size of market? Is it growing or shrinking? Do I have the right distribution for my product? Is my channel strategy aligned with what's happening in the market? What's happening with my category? Are we shifting towards value or towards premium product offerings? My brand is growing, but am I gaining share of market? So for my internal sales numbers, I see growth. Is my growth in line with the market, or am I losing share because I'm not growing as fast as the rest of the brands in my space? And then where should I prioritize my open to buy? What category opportunities might I be missing? Might I be blind to? So let's dive into the data. The first and most macro analysis that we offer is total market sizing and trend. So ultimately, this is the question of what is the size of the prize? Is that prize growing or shrinking? In this instance, where does snowboard equipment, sit within the greater hard goods market, and what influence does it have on the total market performance that we're seeing? So snowboard equipment this past season was a $375 million market with growth performance of 4% over the previous season. And of the major categories, growth from snowboard equipment did the most to actually offset the losses that we saw from winter snow accessories, and then to a lesser degree from alpine equipment. So the total market size of hard goods is $2 billion, and it was flat this past season to the season prior. But within it, we did see growth from snowboard equipment, and it was one of the positive forces within the total industry. Then the next step down from sizing and tracking total industry or total category sell-through is to analyze the size and performance of the individual channels of distribution within the industry. So how does your channel strategy align with the performance and direction of the industry? Are you applying the appropriate resources to your key partners in the key markets? Here's how NPD segments the channels of business within the snow sports industry. So we have Snow Chain on the left. This is your full participating set of retailers, as well as the gray column to the right that represents the retailers that we are projecting for. In the center, this is an example of the snow specialty dealers and the types of retailers that would fall in that bucket. This is not an exhaustive list the way that it is within Snow Chain. And then on the right is the example set of retailers that feed the snow internet channel. So this is how we'll segment the market today. So not only is it important to monitor the channel size and performance at the total channel level, but of course, you also want to understand what your specific category performance is within those channels, and then whether it aligns or misaligns to the total channel direction and what challenges or opportunities that might be representing for you. So here I've charted exactly that. First, total channel performance labeled with percent changes for the last 2 years worth of trend. So reading the chart from top to bottom, we see that snow specialty is the most important channel by volume when you account for all super categories. So this is apparel, accessories, and then winter hard goods. It's a $2.9 billion business, and it fell 5% this last season. But if we look a season previous, it actually grew 5%. Snow Chain is the next largest due to the volume of soft goods, and it too has lost this past season what it gained the season prior. So it fell 4%, but the season previous it had gained 5% in dollars sold. And then lastly, there at the bottom, this is the snow internet channel. In total, it's a $1.2 billion business. Counter to several industries in the US internet business. In snow, it was not a booming segment going into the pandemic. We saw a 4% decline this past season after a 7% growth the season prior. And we'll talk a little bit about what this looked like specifically in March on the next slide. So while snow specialty overall fell 5% this past season, when we look at what happened with total equipment and snowboard equipment specifically, we saw that total equipment grew 1% in the channel on top of the 3% growth from the previous season. Additionally, snowboard equipment alone grew 6% on top of a healthy 8% growth the year before. And therefore, snowboard equipment outperformed both total equipment and the specialty channel, both this season and in the 18-19 season previous. If we step down to snow chain, we see that total equipment has not performed. We see that total equipment has not performed in line with the channel in either seasons. Hard goods saw accelerated contraction with a negative 10% decline this past season. But the segment remained flat in the 18-19 season, despite what we saw channel growth. So snowboard equipment, however, showed standout performance against both total hard goods and the channel. So now we do have to take into account the law of large numbers, because if you look at the size of snowboard equipment versus total equipment in this channel versus snow specialty, we see that it's significantly smaller in volume and certainly significantly smaller in volume than the snow chain channel overall. There's what appears to be an opportunity gap in snow chain for this category. But if you remember the outline of retailers by channel that I showed on the previous slide, we know that many of those retailers by nature are not equipped to manage a high volume of technical equipment sales. So therefore, the opportunity that appears on paper here is not necessarily one that you may want to pursue. However, if we look at what drove the 17% growth 2 seasons ago, the natural progression of analysis leads us to examine the snowboard subclass performances within the channel, as well as the brand performance to understand the drivers of that exceptional growth. Your channel and key account strategy should be guided by a strong understanding of the multi-year trends and underlying dynamics of these channels, as well as how they influence and are influenced by your category, your brand, or your store performances. So we'll dive into that a little bit more deeply. For instance, in the snow internet channel, where several small indie brands have emerged over the last several years, it's also a channel where many manufacturers have developed or worked in partnership with key wholesalers to support growth of e-commerce hard goods sales. The last couple years, the total equipment and snowboard equipment categories both trended fairly in line with the total channel performance for snow internet, with snowboard equipment actually slightly outperforming in each of the last 2 seasons. But the snowboard internet channel this last season was challenged similarly to the rest of the industry. The continual growth of e-commerce penetration seen across US categories is not the case here in snow sports industries, and it's likely due to the particularly specialty nature of our hard goods businesses. With this in mind, it makes it really interesting to look at the snow internet trends for March that I have outlined on the next slide. So what we saw in March, when many snow-centric businesses and businesses across the US were forced to close their doors, was that in the snow internet channel, winter snow sports equipment overall grew 13% in dollars and 16% in units, and it recognized a 3% decline in average selling price across all categories. Most major categories saw double-digit growth in both dollars and in units sold, with units trending slightly faster due to the decline in average selling price. However, in snowboard equipment, this was not the case. March internet sales were actually in line with alpine equipment, the other largest equipment business in the industry, but the dollars change was flat to last March due to a decline of 5% in units sold and an increase of 6% in average selling price. So NPD doesn't track snow sales in the summer months of April through July. Because sales are so minimal, however, we know that other industries, even as stores open back up this summer, that consumers continue to purchase goods from e-commerce at a higher rate than they did prior to COVID. So folks still have, maybe they hadn't adopted online purchasing as widespread before COVID as they did after. And so it's just a habit that they're now in and they're continuing. But it could also be, the apprehension to go into physical stores and shop in that way until, there's a vaccine or until it feels like, there's a real good handle on infection rates, across the board. So this is going to be especially important to watch this channel performance and then also snowboard equipment performance within it as we move into the 2021 season for what it could mean to specifically your long-term channel strategy and then also to inventory planning. A question came in on the market segment. So if a company has brick and mortar and online, do they split their data that they send to you? So Jason, that's an awesome question. And the answer is yes, and maybe no. The pure e-commerce dealers, if you think of some of the example set of retailers that are in the Snow Specialty channel lineup on that outline that I showed the slide a few slides ago, it's like your Evos, your Backcountry, your Moose Jaws. So the bulk of their business is done online. That business goes into this channel. Some retailers that are, truer native .com businesses, they have expanded into brick and mortar. And so they do have a brick and mortar presence. If they're sophisticated enough to break those sales out separately to us, and most of those, e-com dealers are, then yes, those sales sit in Snow Specialty channel. So brick and mortar doors, if they're sent to us that way, the sales go there. E-com sales go into sport specialty e-commerce. The same is true of all the Snow Specialty dealers. So all the dealers that you saw on that list, the larger organizations and managements certainly have more sophisticated POS systems, and they're able to report their sales to us separately. So if they send us a separate file for e-com from brick and mortar, then we break those out, accordingly. However, for everybody on this call, you're likely intimate with, the specialty side of the business. And a lot of those are, one-man shows. It's mom and pop shops. And oftentimes, that doesn't necessarily, the size of the business doesn't necessarily constitute the most sophisticated, POS systems or ability to send us those files broken out. So depending on the size of their business and the size of their e-com business, that will often dictate whether or not it comes in separately. If more than 10% of their sales are done online via e-commerce, then oftentimes those are being separated from their brick and mortar sales for us. Okay, so after channel and moving down a little bit more deeply, the dollar sales growth from snowboard equipment that we saw for the total season, so no longer looking at just March, but for the total season performance, this was driven by a rise in average selling price, or what we say, ASP, across each of the major segments within snowboard equipment. So while unit sales were actually slightly down in all segments, this begins to address the market question: is my category shifting towards more premium or towards more value product? At the surface, each of the segments that we see within snowboard equipment right now have rising ASPs. So it would appear, before we do further analysis, that the snowboard equipment category is shifting towards more premium offerings. When we focus just in on average selling price of the segments within snowboard equipment, we see that season over season for the last 3 seasons, each of the segments within snowboard equipment have recognized consistent increases in average selling price. So this analysis is available at the highest level before bringing in brand or item level analysis, which I'm going to share with you in a few more slides. But this you can get at just with your category information. Down to subclass segment within the reports that I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation today. And if you want a little bit more time with any one of the slides, just know that you can reach out to me and ask for a PDF of this presentation. Maggie with SIA is also recording this, so there'll be a recording that if you want to go back and review any of the commentary on the slides, you'll certainly have the opportunity to do that as well. So another layer of analysis that's important for manufacturers certainly, and then also national retailers, is to review the industry performance by region. Within SIA's snow reporting access, there's the ability to look at how the U.S. snow specialty business by the 4 census regions is performing. The snow business is so dependent on weather, and weather can be so dramatically different by region, that in order to tell the whole story and not just the aggregate at the national level, this regionality is particularly necessary. We can also see that the Western region on the far left, based on volume, whatever's happening in the West is oftentimes controlling, the total roll-up national story. So certainly, not all your business is done in the West. And so if you want to understand what's happening to your brand and how it fits into the industry performance, it's important to be able to segment what's happening in the Midwest versus the South and the Northeast. And then taking regional analysis down another layer and looking at which region contributes to the overall size and growth of snowboard equipment specifically. So today's category and what it looks broken out by region. So I've charted on the left the dollar share for the most recent season in descending order by dollar volume. And then on the right, I've charted share of growth. So what has each region contributed to the growth of snowboard equipment overall? And because the West grew both seasons, but the Midwest and the Northeast actually showed mixed performances the last couple seasons, I decided to combine the 2 seasons for analysis. So because those 2 regions had growth one year and declining another, I thought it told a more complete story if we combine the 2 years together. So by combining those 2 seasons for analysis, we understand that really the West remains the dominant region for both snowboard equipment sales on the left and growth on the right. It also slightly over-indexes on that growth. So while the Midwest has a 13% dollar share, it has only 18%, or excuse me, only 8% share of growth. So it almost garners its fair share of growth, but slightly under indexes on that growth. And then if we look down to the Northeast and the South, we see that the Northeast represents 9% dollar share and 9% for the South. And we see that neither one of those, if we combine the last 2 years' performances, are contributing overall to the growth of the snowboard equipment categories. So they're both underperforming the market. So certainly you want to take these factors into account for your demand planning. If you're a manufacturer and if you're a national retailer, you're using these trends alongside your internal store numbers and performance to inform both your merchandising and then also to manage your inventory. And then driving this analysis a little bit more deeply. So we're still looking at the Western region and taking a look at, fair share by brand, and then also using that to understand maybe assortment if you're a retailer. So the same analysis we'll take down to this brand and item level a step further. So to really understand from a manufacturer perspective, if you're capturing your fair share in the West specifically. So if you're not currently a participating retailer in NPD's panel, or your brand is not already purchasing full brand and item level reporting, reach out to me. I can put you in contact with the right people to move that conversation forward. So once we start here, this data is not available to you in the reports that you have through your subscription with SIA. You have to go a step further to get this detail. So in the last 2 years, I don't think anyone even peripherally connected to the snowboard market would be surprised to see that Burton has over-indexed in growth given, their new product innovation and, new offerings to the market. But what you might be delighted to know is that there's several other brands that also index in their fair share of growth compared with their dollar share in the category. So what I've done here, I've got dollar share for this last season charted on the left. in descending order. So Burton represents 32% of the dollars sold in the snowboard equipment market. And then descending down from there, Ride has 11%, Salomon has 11%, and so on. So this is snowboards, snowboard bindings, and snowboard boots all combined together. And then on the right-hand side, you see share of growth, again, for the past 2 seasons. And again, we're still talking about the Western region. So the one that's, most contributing growth to the overall category. So we see that Burton is 45% share of the growth that the category has seen in the West in the past 2 years. So compared with their 32% dollar share, certainly they're over-indexing in that growth. But for each of the light blue bars, that's representing the brands that are over-indexing by 1% or more in their share of growth contribution. So Salomon is over-indexing Union, Libtech, Capita, and Jones. And then again, your first inclination, if you're, been paying attention to the market, but not really tuned into the data, is to assume that the main growth drivers of Burton's, exceptional growth contribution is the step-on binding and boots, because, we know that they were new to the market the last few years, and that innovation got a lot of excitement from consumers. However, while that is true, it isn't actually the whole truth. And when we compare top items by dollars sold versus absolute sold, we can recognize that, several other items have been integral to the market growth in snowboard equipment in the West, both from Burton and from other brands. Burton contributes on the left 3 of the top five selling items in the table. But the Ride Lasso boot and Union Force binding garner the top 2 spots in terms of dollars sold in the market. So in terms of volume, those 2 items are outpacing it. But if you combine all of the other individual items from Burton together, certainly they roll up to the top at a brand level. And the chart on the right, which is absolute dollars sold, so new dollars added to the market, Burton again makes up 3 of the top 5 models in this space, but it's actually not the step-on models that led the growth. It was Burton's Ruler Boa boot, that's the number 1, and then the Libtech T Rice Orca Series board takes the number 2 spot. So this view, to align with the previous slides that I showed you, for the Western region and for the last 2 seasons, has the combined absolute dollars sold for the last 2 seasons. If we get a little bit more granular and we just look at this past season, then I can tell you that the Libtech Orca board actually takes over as a top growing model with a big jump in sales this past season. Also, the ASP for that board is over $500. And although it fell just slightly this last season, it's seen a tremendous growth in units for a board at a price point that is, over $500, when this average for the segment is around $365. So it's certainly contributing to that overall growth in ASP that we saw when we broke out the segments. And then in turn, the ASP growth for snowboard equipment overall. So this is an example of why you really want to subscribe to full brand and item level reporting, as opposed to just getting, some snapshots here and there of what the top 10 sellers reports show. If you're only analyzing top sellers, then you're really missing the full story, and you're not seeing, what items are up and coming that could be, that will be the top sellers in a couple seasons, but are on the way up. And so you want to capture that growth, just as it's beginning and before it becomes a market leader. So you want to be able to see that full story in your analysis so that you can make those business decisions appropriately. And tracking the brands and items driving growth over several seasons helps you to recognize the macro trends across categories and what's more across industries. So one trend that NPD has spoken to for several years now is that of small brands capturing consumer attention in a really big way. This is true in snow, this is true in beauty, and a number of other markets. We called this out in the 18-19 season review, that particularly within snowboard equipment, small brands outside the top 5 were driving an unusual amount of growth for the category. This trend continued to hold some truth this past season as well, where we saw LibTech, which is the number 6th ranked brand by dollars sold. It contributed the highest in absolute dollars sold for the 1920 season. And then additionally, Jones Snowboards, which is the 10th ranked brand by dollars sold, made the top 5 list for new dollars added to snowboard equipment. And then also lastly, Vans, which falls outside the top 10, but ranks 12th by dollars sold. It's important to note, that also there's only a partial truth here, because if you look at the slide that I have here, certainly Burton and Solomon, which are the number 1 and the number 3 ranked brands by dollars sold, they do still account for 44%, so almost half of the share of snowboard equipment growth for the season for the total US. But these other small brands are certainly, making a big impact. So now that I've walked through several examples of, ways that you can leverage the NPD sell-through data, at the macro industry, at the channel level, and then all the way down to brand and item and average selling price. What can make NPD data even more powerful and actionable for your business is when the insights that you get from the sell-through are combined with other data sources. So as an SIA member, it really behooves you to be aware that you have access to consumer research, participation studies, as well as sell-in data that really should be married with your sell-through data to give you really the most holistic view on the industry, on its trends, and what it should mean for your business. So be sure to look for that if you're not already leveraging it today. And then if you haven't seen the monthly market reports before, I'm going to pull them up now and walk you through them so that you can understand a little bit more what they include. So on the left-hand side, I'm showing you just a little snippet of the top line reports that have individual views of snowboards, snowboard bindings, and then also snowboard boots. So that's on the left, and I'm going to pull that up real quick for you now. Okay, so here's an example of the snowboards report. So this is one of the 3 that are specific to snowboard equipment. So you're looking at the title page here. The report date is going to show you the month that this was published in. So NPD publishes data for the snow industry for the months of August through March. So August is as everybody on the call here knows, really just the start of the season, and it's a lot of clearance activity that's happening. So retailers are pulling out their inventory that they packed away at the end of last season, and there's really not enough meat on the bone of that month to report it solo. So we combine it and deliver it with the month of September. So those two months are combined, but every other month throughout the season through March are delivered separately standalone. And so this is the last report from this past season, so March 2020. Your title page, you have a table of contents. So everything here is hot linked. So you can jump to the different tabs within the report. If you know exactly what you want to go to, you want to see the all channels top line, then you can click the link there and it'll jump you right to it. We have an all channel summary. So this is Snow Specialty, Snow Internet, and Snow Chain all rolled together. And this is kind of your overview of what took place in snowboards for the season. So because this is the last month of the season, we see the current period and then also the season to date. So March sales, unit sales versus March 2019. You can see where the unit sales are down, and you can see the unit sales and dollar sales are both up for split boards. So no surprise, because this is the month of March. We know that everything that helped participants to get into the backcountry and to continue their season after all of the resorts closed were very, very popular, and inventory really cleared out kind of across the country. So excuse me, no big surprise to see huge jump in the unit and dollar sales there for the current period, and then it also influenced the season to date. So that's kind of your total overview, by the different segments of snowboards. Then you can get a little bit more detail by channel. If you take a look at the dollar analysis here, it'll also show you the trend by month throughout the season. So no surprise that December is, the highest selling month of the season, but you can see how it compares to August, to January, to March, to each of the months within the season. And then a similar view for the unit analysis. Your all channels top line. This is going to give you, again, the breakout by snowboards, both for the current period, but then you'll see units sold, dollar sold, and average selling price, as well as those percent changes. And then you can get each of the channels broken out separately. So specialty top line, this is going to be your snow specialty channel and the performance of each of those snowboard segments within it. Chain top line is here and internet top line is here. And then just after the specialty, you also have the breakout of what the regional performance looked like. So in the previous examples of data, I showed you how we can look at the regional analysis and take that into account when we're analyzing the equipment performance. So this is, again, the Snowboard Report. We also have it for snowboard boots and snowboard bindings. So that's the NPD top line, SIA top line report. And then I'm going to also take you to this report on the right. It is Snow Industry Retail Market Report. So this is a little bit more overarching. So when I look at this report with you, the cover page, it's going to give you the date that the report was actually produced as opposed to the data month. So this says updated May 2020. It is inclusive of data through March, similar to the previous report that I just showed you. But this report's a little bit different. It's not as specific to snowboard equipment. It covers all of the hierarchy of the snow sports industry, and you get access to all of that as a member of SIA. So this report NPD builds specifically for SIA. It covers the month that it's produced in, as well as building to the season to date. And then it's all your standard measures of dollar sold, unit sold, and average selling price. So again, we have a table of contents tab that's hot linked, and you can jump to different things. If you want to know more about NPD, we have an overview of that here. It also talks about our methodology and how we bring this data to market. And then the retailers by channel outline that I gave you in the presentation today, this is also afforded to you here. So if you have any uncertainty about what might be driving a trend that you're seeing in the data, and you're like, oh, who sits in that channel? Like, what could be the force behind that? I know so-and-so carries such and such brand. And so it's really, it's good to have this on hand to just remind you of where some of the, trends might be being derived from. So that's your retailers by channel. And then also the channel definitions of why we put retailers, segment them the way that we do. And your category hierarchy. So your category hierarchy is going to be outlined pretty much in the data tabs. But again, if you want to know exactly how we define any of the subclass segments, you have all of that information here. And then jumping into the actual data tabs. So the ones in blue here are the meat of the file and what you want to go to. So the first one is current period by gender and season to date by gender. This is a good view to have, certainly, because men's and women's businesses perform very different. So there's a good amount of detail that you can get when you have it separated that way. I usually jump first at a more like macro analysis level. I like to start high and then drill down. So my first spot to go to is current period and season to date. So current period is going to tell me exactly what happened in the month of March, so March 2020. At the top here, I have a channel slicer. At first, because I want to know, from a macro perspective, what the trends were in that month, then I'll keep it, rolled up for all channels together. So I'm looking at total industry when this says all. And then again, current period is just the month of March. So if I look across the board, total sales across all of, apparel and equipment, we're down 43%. We know that, huge impacts to store closures took place in the month of March. And then if I want to get even deeper into my, specific equipment categories, I go to equipment. Accessories is going to be sports racks and instruments. Your hard goods are going to be within, the winter sports section right here. You see the major alpine equipment, alpine touring, and then here's what you came for today, the snowboard equipment. So we have bindings, boots, and snowboards all broken out here. And you can see that trend that happened in the month of March. Across the whole category was down 26%, units were down 28%, and there was a growth of 3% in ASP. And you can see how each of the subclasses contributed to that. Now, if I want to know, well, that was total industry, what happened in Snow Internet solo, then I can jump strictly to the internet channel, and you can see exactly what I showed you in the slide today. The dollar sales were flat for the month of March. Unit sales were down 5%, and ASP was up 6%. And then you can also see how that compared to the total industry. So winter snow sports equipment, hard goods overall were up 13%. Units were up 16%, and ASP fell 3%. And then you can certainly see to some of the segments that really took off, alpine touring equipment and alpine equipment, some of the other major equipment categories. So that's current period. And then you can also see full season. So full season to date, again, total channel or total industry. If you leave channel unaltered, it'll be everything. If you want to look specifically at one channel's performance, then you can select into that and again expand it out to exactly what you're wanting to see. So performance for Snow Internet for the full season for snowboard equipment was down 1% dollars, 6% units, and ASP grew 6%. So a lot of great detail in this report. It's meant to be, more overarching, so it gives you all of the categories that you have access to. And then you can even get a little bit more specific and look at your specialty region performance, similarly laid out to the other two tabs I showed you. So current period, specialty region. So this is snow specialty dealers, that one channel, and the breakout of regional performance. Season to date afforded here as well. So that's the overview of those two reports that you have access to. So know that those are available to you as a member within SIA, and there's a whole host of insights that can be garnered from that. And I haven't seen any more questions come in. Maggie, have you seen any more questions during the time of the presentation?
I haven't, so we can give people a minute right now, see if any more come in. Otherwise, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Laura, or anybody at SIA on the team, and we'd be happy to help answer your questions or direct you to somebody who does know the answer. And please, access the reports. There's a wealth of information. And Laura, thank you so much for taking your time this afternoon. But it doesn't look like anything else is coming in at this point in time. So we'll let people get on with their day and hopefully gain 10 minutes to do something that they'd like to do this afternoon. So we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks everyone for joining. Please do reach out if you have any questions. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Laura. Bye.